Hello, and welcome to a brief lesson on ecological succession using the game Equilinox. There are two types of ecological succession, primary and secondary. Primary succession is when new ground is created, such as by a volcano erupting. Nothing lives there, nothing lived there, but now species can begin to colonize it. Typically, the lichen are some of the earliest ones. They break it down into usable soil for other plants to come in. Secondary succession is more after a disturbance. So maybe there was a horrible forest fire, wiped out everything. And that is the case that I'm going to model today. So in this area, there was a horrible forest fire. It wiped out everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. This seems like a good place to work with. So after this horrible forest fire, all that's left behind are maybe some rocks and some stones. Not too much. However, in that soil, there are some seeds and also some roots and plants that can start to sprout really quickly. And that tends to include grasses. So I'm going to put some grass all around here. You may notice that the land starts to turn a bit green. So this area is now starting to become more of a grassland than barren, dead land. Another kind of plant that tends to be very early are annual plants. Annuals mean that it lives for one season and dies. This is compared to perennials, where one plant will live multiple seasons before dying, so they can reproduce multiple times. You may have heard this term in terms of flowers, like these buttercups, which are annuals, and also perennials at flower stores, because if you buy a perennial, you don't have to replant the flowers every year, versus if you buy an annual, you will. So I'm going to put some lovely buttercups all around. Add a little bit of spice. We'll add some marigolds too, as different flowers may start to come up, including perennials. One example of a perennial is the daisy. So I'll put some daisies up too. We've got daisies, we've got buttercups, we've got all sorts of things starting to sprout. Maybe we even have a little bit of rosemary. Rosemary pops up. You may notice that there's no wildlife yet. However, that doesn't tend to be the case for too long. Birds especially are really good at traveling. So maybe some sparrows fly in. Sparrows eat berries, which their fecal matter, for lack of a better term, may contain some seeds. So maybe some blueberry bushes start to pop up. These blueberry bushes are providing food and shelter for other species to come in. Maybe, for example, a squirrel manages to find its way over here. And also, now that there's some flowers, some bees are starting to notice, and they happen to be close enough that they can buzz their way in to get some of that sweet, sweet nectar. Other plants start to bloom, such as lilies. You may notice, though, it's mostly shrubbery and small little plants that have been growing so far. It's time for some trees. However, there's two real classifications of trees that are going to grow in succession. There's the young forest, earlier trees, which tend to be more shade intolerant and fast-growing plants. Then there's the more mature forest trees, which tend to be ones that maybe require a bit of shade, especially as a younger tree, or just take a lot longer to grow. In this case, pine trees can sometimes be an earlier successional species. So we'll just plop some down. It's getting a nice forested environment. However, now that there's a bit more shade, other plants can start to grow. I'm going to use heather as an example plant for this, although I don't know if they actually require shade. But some plants will require this, and then they'll grow in the shade provided. Look at all that heather starting to sprout up. It provides optimal conditions for the new species to grow. Perhaps now some later successional trees are starting to sprout, like an oak tree. Got some of those placed around. Maybe add a few more buttercups since they tend to be happy here. Although, occasionally, Sometimes some plants don't do well after the first few stages of succession. Like in this case, I'm going to use a daisy as an example. I'm going to remove some because in this case, daisies are being outcompeted by the later plants, meaning they can't survive. So this red circle is deleting all of the daisies. Sorry, daisies. This can happen due to things such as changes to the soil composition. It could be chemicals released by other plants. It could even be simply being outcompeted for space, or the introduction of new herbivores, such as a deer, or a few deer. Let's have a herd over here. Maybe that's a few too many deer. Well, there is one way to solve the problem of too many deer. Put a couple of wolves in. They've been attracted by these deer. They notice now that there's food, so we'll just get rid of a few of them. That's a more manageable amount. Other animals might start to come in, like maybe some doves, fox or two, a couple ducks by the pond, some bouncy sheep, and other trees are also going to be spreading. Maybe some maple trees are popping up too now, creating a nice, gorgeous, rich in biodiversity environment. Biodiversity simply means that there's a lot of different species happening at the same time. Having a richer biodiversity typically makes an ecosystem more resilient to change. So, for example, if something wipes out one herbivore species, other herbivores can then essentially take over the role of that specific herbivore, meaning that the plants are still facing the same pressure and can't, like, go nuts reproducing. Let's add a few butterflies in too. Maybe put some over there, over there, over there. This is getting to be a bit of a busy environment, but I think it's looking pretty nice. Late successional species don't have to just be trees. There are some plants, which actually holly bushes are a real example of a later successional plant, I believe. So we'll put some holly bushes up. Maybe put some over in that forest area. Now we've got a mature forest and grassland environment. Mature simply means that it's in a later state, it's pretty stable. There is no technical finished ecosystem. Some may refer to something as a climax community. That simply means that it's potentially like a final, most biodiverse, steady version. However, in this case, I think we've reached our climax community. We have all sorts of plants, we have all sorts of little flowers, grasses, trees. We have herbivores like deer, rabbits. We have carnivores like wolves and foxes. We have all sorts of birds that can disperse seeds. We have little insects that pollinate. We've got a lot here. Very pretty. I have to say, I have been greatly enjoying this game, both for its scientificness and also how cute it is. Like, look at these sheep. You could even take control of one. I hope you all have enjoyed the brief lesson on ecological succession. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys.